Hello and welcome to Kiryat Ye'arim, a place that was home to the Ark of the Covenant, the Aron HaBerit, for at least 20 years until it was brought to Jerusalem by King David. In this video we're going to talk about the year of Shemitah, its special mitzvot, and we'll see how the story of the Ark being brought to Jerusalem will teach us a lesson about the mitzvot of Shemitah. So there are two main mitzvot that we do every 7 years, and the common thread is sort of letting go, not being in control, and instead relying on God. So first we have letting go of the land. As the Torah says, "V'hashibi'it tishmetena untashta." Just abandon your fields, don't gather your produce, but just rely on God that He'll bless you with food and sustenance. And the second is letting go of our money, debts that people owe to us. The Torah says, "Shamot kol ba'al mashe yado asher yashe b're'ehu." Just drop your hand, let go of that money that people owe you, and rely on God that He'll bless you with wealth nonetheless. And I think that these mitzvot demand a lot from us. And I think that that is why our sages actually enacted a lot of leniencies and loopholes over the years to make this easier to follow, lest people who are so hard-pressed to make ends meet end up breaking more rules instead of doing the proper thing and relying on God. Getting back to this place, what can it teach us? So, as mentioned, this was once home to the Ark of the Covenant. Today, there's actually a Jewish town over there, also called Kiryat Ye'arim, here in the valley. That's actually an Arab town called Abu Ghosh. And here behind the trees is a church. It's known as the Church of the Ark of the Covenant, or by its Arab name, the Deir el-Azar Monastery. And the reason it's called Deir el-Azar, which means the home of El-Azar, is because of the belief that it's actually built on top of the house where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. The Tanakh tells us it was a man named Abinadab, and he had a son, El-Azar, hence Deir el-Azar. So, just to recap what the Ark of the Covenant was doing here, it was brought here after the Philistines returned it to Israel. It was just a temporary home. The family took care of it, and then King David eventually decided to bring it to his newly established capital of Jerusalem. When he did so, they put the ark on a wagon. All of the people of Israel came. It was a very joyous procession. The wagon was drawn by cattle, and two brothers were also sons of this Abinadab. The brothers were named Ahyo and Uzzah. So they were driving the cattle. And it happened on the way, and the story is told in the book of Shemuel and the book of Deuteronomy. So you see they had a very up and down sort of way to Jerusalem. It's about 15 minutes east on the highway, so it was not more than a day's project. But despite all the ups and downs, it actually happened at a place that was flat, that the cattle all of a sudden lost their footing. And the wagon teetered. It seemed like the ark was about to fall. Vaishlach Uzzah el Aron ha-Elohim vayohez bo ki shametu bakar. The brother Uzzah put out his hand to stabilize the ark. Why? Because Shemitah bakar, the cattle lost their footing. But he uses that word Shemitah, which we know from the Torah means to let go. So they sort of let go of the ark, and he was trying to stabilize it. But what happened? He wasn't supposed to touch the ark, and therefore God's retribution was very swift. He just dropped dead like a sack of potatoes on the spot. Because God expected him also, he was supposed to let go. Just leave it in God's hands, not take control of the situation. Overcome that instinct to be in control, just like in Shemitah we do. But what was King David's reaction? So this joyous day turned into a day of mourning. And King David was actually, it says he was angry and afraid of God on that day, and he canceled the whole project. He said, we're not bringing the ark to Jerusalem. It's too dangerous to have God in our midst. We can't handle everything that God's expecting of us, to just give up control and let go like that. But eventually he changed his mind. The ark was at another caretaker's house for 3 months, but then King David heard that in the new home, the home of Obed-Edom Haggiti, his whole household saw a blessing from hosting the ark. And that's when King David realized, you know what? Despite the fact that we're dealing with things very dangerous and God asks so much of us, on the other hand, when we embrace the mitzvot and we embrace God, He gives us His blessing. And that's what this family saw, and he decided to go ahead with it, and they brought the ark to Jerusalem. This time they didn't put on a wagon. They had it carried the proper way with poles and people holding on their shoulders, and that was the happy end of the story. And I think something we can learn from here as we go into the year of Shemitah is that sometimes God asks us to let go and rely on Him, rely on His blessing. It's a very difficult thing for us to do. We always need to be in control. But when we're thinking about setting aside money for tzedakah or time for doing chesed or for studying Torah, often we have to look past our livelihood and things that are sort of up in the air, but really just relying on God and relying on His blessing. So that's something that we can think about as we go into the year of Shemitah. Thanks so much for watching, and Shana Tova.